This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. A day of unusual twists, turns, and harsh charges in the presidential campaign. The oddest twist of all, at least seemingly unfounded rumors on Wall Street that an investigation of George Bush's private life was about to go public in print sent stock prices tumbling during the day. On the campaign trail itself, Mike Dukakis was in Midwest farm country and was summing up some of the Republican negative campaign attacks on him with one word: garbage. President Reagan, reflecting Republican Party confidence, was already talking publicly today about a new Bush presidential administration and a Republican Congress. Correspondent Bruce Morton, traveling with the Dukakis campaign, begins our coverage.
The Dukakis campaign bussed across Illinois and Missouri today. First stop a farm where the candidate told supporters here and by satellite in 20 states around the country how bad George Bush's farm policy was. Fellow travelers were telling reporters he had to do more than that.
We have to go after these charges that have been leveled by George Bush on television every night about patriotism and soft on crime.
Dukakis boarding the bus seemed to agree.
Well, look, I'm going to be tough on Bush because I don't like my record distorted, and I think there's a very fundamental difference between us.
The next stop was the pretty western Illinois town of Quincy, and before several thousand people, Dukakis pulled some Republican literature out and launched his counterattack.
I've just been handed some stuff that's been mailed around the state of Illinois. I don't know how many of you have gotten this. Friends, this is garbage. This is political garbage.
The flyers talk about a Massachusetts furlough program under which a convict on leave committed murder. Dukakis mentioned similar incidents in California when Ronald Reagan was governor and in the federal furlough program, and called Bush's use of the Massachusetts case hypocritical.
Let's debate the real issues. Let's debate Mr. Bush's record in the war against drugs and in law enforcement. But let's not be scaring people with this kind of stuff. This isn't worthy of a presidential campaign.
Issues like crime and gun control matter here. Dukakis, rolling across the Mississippi River, has taken the advice to hit back. The question may be, has he taken it in time? Bruce Morton, CBS News, Hannibal, Missouri.
Thank you all very much.
George Bush's line of attack today was again a combination of past strategies. Campaigning with former President Gerald Ford in Michigan, Bush again talked himself up as experienced on foreign policy, and he again tried to portray Dukakis as outside the American mainstream.
I am going to keep fighting like I am 10 points behind. We are going to out-hustle that man. We are going to outwork that liberal governor from Massachusetts. And I'm going to win.
While George Bush kept saying he is not overconfident about winning, President Reagan went even further, talking up the idea of realignment and a mandate for a Republican-controlled Congress under a Bush presidency. Mr. Reagan was campaigning for Bush in Columbus, Ohio, and practically declaring the Dukakis campaign all over and done.
With the liberal presidential campaign starting to fall apart, shouldn't we ask if we must ride two horses, Congress and the President, across every stream, shouldn't they both be going the same way?
Then there was the bizarre twist on Wall Street today growing out of the presidential campaign. A rumor, so far as anyone can determine strictly a rumor, circulated that for a time drove stock prices down sharply. It centered on talk that the Washington Post tomorrow was going to publish a story about Vice President Bush's personal life. So widespread was this rumor and so serious was its effect on stock prices that the Washington Post took the almost unprecedented step of saying in advance that it planned no such story. And as CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady reports, the rumors said more about the state of Wall Street's nerves on this anniversary of the crash than they do about politics.
1 year after the worst stock market crash in history, it was a nervous, volatile market today, swept by rumors that sent the Dow Jones average falling more than 22 points and on heavy volume. Dow Jones itself, the big financial publisher, put out this recording.
The Washington Post denied a rumor that it has a story damaging to the Bush campaign.
The market has begun to factor in that Mr. Bush is going to win the presidency, and they've begun to take that into account. The rumor would indicate the possibility that that substantial lead that he apparently has been building up could be damaged.
Wall Street clearly is suffering from the shock of October 19th. Its business is way off.
The stock crash did for the market what Jaws did for swimming. Everybody came back to the beach, but they didn't go in the water.
So on long, slow business days, rumors can flood the market, even sending many Wall Streeters to psychoanalysts.
They say it's like a morgue. The telephone hardly rings. It's so quiet, and everyone's walking around with a kind of a depressed attitude and depressed mood.
With the stock business so nervous, other businesses on Wall Street are off.
I used to get more before the crash went down. Now I'm getting less, much less.
But at services today at Trinity Church, the Wall Street church, no crowds. They went down, says its rector, as stocks went up.
Look at the market is back. So we don't need to change our ways, do we? Because the market is back.
There's an old saying in the financial community that Wall Street runs from the river to the graveyard, this graveyard. And that about sums up Wall Street's feelings on this, the one day it would love to forget, the anniversary of October 19th, 1987. Ray Brady, CBS News, New York.
In Washington, the Commerce Department today said an upswing in apartment construction helped housing starts climb a modest 1.5% in September. One analyst said fairly stable interest rates, for the moment at least, held housing activity on a steady course for the past 4 months. But today's government report noted that building permits, a sign of future activity, fell a sharp 4.4% last month. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, correspondent David Dow on the men and machines mobilized to save those ice-bound whales, and Richard Roth on why 3 cold whales are hot news.
If they could see me now out on a fun ship cruise, eating fancy food and doing what I choose, I'd like my friends back home to get a good look at the first-rate carnival cruise that I took. All I can say is, wow, hey, look at where I am. What a fun ship, holy cow. They'd never believe it if my friends could.
So on your next vacation, take a 3, 4, or 7-day cruise on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Introducing the next Eagle Summit, a small front-wheel drive car that feels big, thanks to a surprisingly supple suspension and amazing interior room. But when you add Summit's optional 16-valve dual overhead cam engine, it gets small again.
One card lets you call from anywhere in your calling area to virtually anywhere in the world and pay the same as if you were calling from your desk. So now you can have the biggest office in town because the town is your office. The MCI card. It is America's business card.
If every time you look around it seems like your rug is dirty, try Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner. Because it contains the ingredient Fiber Pel, it keeps your heavy traffic areas cleaner longer than the other liquid spray. Trust Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner.
More tonight about the safety and security problems plaguing facilities crucial to the nation's nuclear defense. The U.S. Energy Department today said it would take billions of dollars and decades of time to clean them up. Correspondent Deborah Potter reports on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. There's a growing call to shut them down until the danger is over, no matter how much money it costs or how much time it takes.
Pressure intensified today to keep the nation's nuclear weapons plants shut down until the government proves they're safe. 3 environmental groups threatened to file suit to block the Energy Department from restarting the Savannah River plant in South Carolina, closed since August because of safety concerns.
We are sending a message to the department that the public will not tolerate being lied to about the hazards of one of the most dangerous industrial operations in the world.
There also were angry calls to close this plant at Fernald, Ohio, now idled by a strike, where the government itself admits that tons of radiation have been released into the atmosphere.
This facility is an environmental disaster threatening the health and safety of thousands of Ohioans.
Arriving in Ohio today, President Reagan tried to dispel concerns.
I am pretty sure
open and run unless it is absolutely safe.
But an internal Energy Department report on Fernald, obtained by CBS News, suggests the government may not be able to assess the risk because its own handling of hazardous emissions has been so lax.
The evidence is that they don't really know how much they emitted because they weren't monitoring most sources, and the sources which they were monitoring, they were systematically underestimating how much was being emitted.
A dozen members of Congress today wrote President Reagan to urge a major management shakeup at nuclear weapons plants.
The Department of Energy is not in control of its own facilities. It is captive of its contractors.
I think it's being run very well. We have a good plan in effect. There's a good margin of safety.
But administration officials admit there are big problems to be addressed, and it's going to be expensive to clean up the mess. Estimated cost, at least $100 billion over the next 40 years. Deborah Potter, CBS News, Washington.
The Food and Drug Administration today announced plans to speed up approval of drugs designed to fight AIDS and other deadly diseases. The agency said these new procedures could cut the time needed to test a new drug by 1/2 to 1/3. But in most cases, the proposal would require a large financial commitment from drug companies before they have any realistic idea of whether the drug will pan out. And AIDS activists attacked today's announcement just weeks before the presidential election as strictly a political ploy. A non-addictive drug to help heroin addicts kick their habit. A drug, moreover, that could help control the spread of AIDS. Researchers now say a drug with that potential may be at hand. CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer reports.
Every heroin addict who has ever tried to stop knows the pain of withdrawal.
Once I got off, I went right to the dope. I went right back to the dope because I was so sick.
What you ideally need is a drug that you could take while you're still addicted, that you can just walk in off the street, start this medication, and it will take away your withdrawal symptoms and you'll feel all right.
At last, researchers may have found that drug, a drug called buprenorphine, which many experts say is the most exciting new approach to treating heroin addiction in years.
It's not a perfect drug, but it does offer quite a few advantages, we think, to other drugs that are presently available.
Buprenorphine is already in use as an injectable painkiller, but tests with addicts have shown that when taken orally, it can block the effect of heroin. Methadone, the main drug now used in treatment, can do that too. But methadone is itself highly addictive. Withdrawing from it can be excruciating. By contrast, buprenorphine is virtually non-addicting, so coming off all drugs becomes much easier.
By eliminating or minimizing withdrawal symptoms, it makes it more likely to achieve a drug-free goal.
And how about getting off of it?
Off of this was easy. I mean, you got to want to do it. It took 5 days. That's all it was 5 days.
Nor does this drug produce a high, though experts say it does have enough effect to stabilize someone who is used to a fix and to keep an addict in treatment, a big advantage given the link between IV drug use and the spread of AIDS.
Any kind of treatment that you can get that will in fact retain them in treatment and get them to decrease their IV drug use, and of course sharing needles, which goes with that, the better you are.
No one thinks that any one drug will provide the answer to heroin addiction. But if new studies bear out buprenorphine's early promise, government officials say they will press to make it widely available, a potential new weapon in this country's desperate war on drugs. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
3 American scientists who worked together in the early 1960s today won the Nobel Prize in Physics for their discoveries about subatomic particles. The Swedish Academy said Leon Letterman, Melvin Schwartz, and Jack Steinberger used their coffee breaks at New York's Columbia University to break through major obstacles in physics. They invented a beam of tiny neutrinos that could penetrate the innermost structure of matter. The Nobel Prize in Chemistry goes to 3 West Germans for their discoveries about plant proteins. The Pentagon today announced a temporary ban on awarding any new contracts to Sunstrand Corporation. This follows the big defense contractors' agreement last week to pay the government a $115 million settlement for contract fraud. Today's ban only applies to new contracts. It doesn't apply to Pentagon contracts with Sunstrand already in effect.
My grandfather, Norman Rockwell, captured the spirit of the American family. Oldsmobile has its eye on a new generation, and our '88 Royale fits right into the picture.
An honest American value with a tradition of comfort. A modern 3800 V6 engine and front-wheel drive.
For today's American family, the 88 Royale is state-of-the-art.
This is the new generation of Ford.
Welcome to a room unlike any you've ever seen. A room where the light comes on automatically when you enter, then goes off when you leave. Where you never have to flip a switch, pull a string, or wish you had an extra hand. Every room could be this convenient if you add a First Alert sensor switch. It automatically turns the lights in any room on and off. Sensor switch from First Alert. Isn't there room for one in your home? Look for the complete sensor switch line.
For every investment expert who says the market's going up, an expert says it's going down. If the experts can't be certain, what chance do you have? A much better chance if you invest in Nuveen for steady, tax-free income. Nuveen. It's the long-term investment of certainty in a climate of uncertainty. Nuveen. America's tax-free investments.
For more information, call your broker or financial advisor or 800-372-1500.
NASA engineers today confirmed they are investigating a leak found near the base of a combustion chamber in one of Space Shuttle Discovery's 3 main engines. It isn't immediately known if the leak developed during Discovery's climb into space or after the engines were shut down in orbit. 2 domestic passenger planes crashed in India today. 164 people were killed. Most of the victims were aboard an Indian Airlines jet that went down as it tried to land in a dense fog in western India. All but 5 of the 135 people aboard were killed. A little more than an hour later, a propeller plane crashed into a forest in heavy rain in the eastern province of Assam. All 34 people are feared dead in that Indian crash. An underground Muslim group in Beirut tonight claimed responsibility for a deadly car bomb attack against Israeli forces in South Lebanon. For Israel, it was the worst border attack since last year's hang glider raid that killed 6 Israelis and helped ignite the Palestinian uprising. Today's attack was also linked to the uprising, as Bob Simon tells us.
It was a suicide mission which succeeded. A man drove a white Toyota packed with 330 pounds of TNT into an Israeli convoy a few hundred yards from the Good Fence, which is what Israelis call their border with Lebanon. 7 Israeli soldiers were killed, 8 were injured. So were 2 Lebanese women who happened to be passing by. The blast was so powerful, no remains were found of the attack car or the bomb or the bomber. It was the most severe blow dealt Israeli forces since they withdrew from Lebanon almost 3.5 years ago. As the wounded were being evacuated, in Beirut, a pro-Iranian Muslim group called Islamic Resistance claimed responsibility, saying it was a gift to the Palestinian uprising intended to celebrate the birthday Saturday of the Prophet Muhammad, celebrated with empty boots and charred remains, with more wreckage in the Middle East. It had been a routine convoy in a place where the oldest routine is death and devastation and the certainty of revenge. Defense Minister Rabin promised retaliation, declaring that Israel will reach every murderer everywhere. Coming just 12 days before Israel's elections, the attack will play into the hands of the hardliners. It is one more body blow to advocates of moderation and compromise on both sides of the fence. Bob Simon, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
The British government of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher today imposed a gag rule on radio and television coverage of the Irish Republican Army. Britain's networks are now barred from broadcasting interviews or statements by IRA members or supporters. Prime Minister Thatcher said the idea is to deprive the rebel group of what she has repeatedly called the oxygen of publicity. The state-owned BBC said all of this sets a damaging precedent and will hamper its reporting on the conflict in Northern Ireland. The ban does not apply to non-British broadcasters.
Oh, look at me back in the 60s, working up a sweat. Oh, and that's how I used to pump iron. Not today. Today we're exercising more and eating less red meat. But red meat is a great source of iron.
Only Kellogg's Bran Flakes has high fiber and 100% of the iron recommended today.
So now I pump a little iron outside and inside. You know, I haven't felt this good since I burned that bathing suit.
Kellogg's Bran Flakes.
Introducing the next Eagle. Eagle Summit. Available with dual overhead cam, 16 valves, multi-port fuel injection, all in a car designed to be roomy and useful. Eagle Summit. It soars.
She has legs that just won't give up. It's a feeling that really shows. She's a no-nonsense kind of woman. She wears no-nonsense pantyhose.
At No Nonsense, we design pantyhose to last beautifully.
She makes the most of her day. She gives it all that she's got. She's one busy lady. Her legs never stop. No nonsense. Well, if the attitude fits, wear it.
Actress Robin Givens today announced that she will grant heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson a divorce and, in a reversal, will not seek any money from the man she married 8 months ago. Tyson not immediately available for comment. The unusual hurricane they've nicknamed Joan strengthened in the Caribbean today with winds clocked up to 110 miles an hour. The storm is now headed toward Central America, and in Costa Rica, the government declared a state of emergency and began evacuating residents along the east coast. Hurricane preparations are also underway in Panama and Nicaragua. The odds grow longer as the hours tick by and the temperatures drop, but with what now seems to be the whole world watching, efforts intensified today to keep those 3 whales alive as the Arctic ice closes in. David Dow is with the whales in Alaska.
The fight to buy time for 3 trapped California gray whales continues through the eternal sunrise of an Arctic day. Native crews carved 2 more breathing holes for the whales. They now have 4, and the whales quickly found them.
The problem, of course, is going to be keeping the hole open in view of declining temperatures.
Meanwhile, an on-again, off-again rescue operation involving an ice-clearing hover barge appeared to be on again this afternoon. Last night, a giant helicopter had trouble towing the barge, so 70 tons of fuel was unloaded, and the procession again prepared for the 200-mile trip from Prudhoe Bay to Barrow. If the operation fails, officials may consider a backup, using the helicopter to batter the ice with 14-ton chunks of concrete, and thus open a 5-mile channel for the whales to stretches of open ocean. The question is how long the whales can survive in their confined environment.
It would be like being under the ice in a river in which there's a strong current flowing and there's a hole in the ice about the size of a manhole cover, and you've got to find that hole every time you need to take a breath.
The whales are banged up and stressed. Should they become exhausted, they face attacks from polar bears lurking a few miles away. One thing going for them, their energy levels should be high from a summer of feasting on Alaska's rich marine life. Were they with other gray whales migrating south for the winter, they would not be eating anyway. But putting all that together, scientists don't know whether they can survive where they are for days, weeks, or months. All they're sure of is a growing public clamor to save them.
The world wants this to go, and we have no other course but to pursue this one until we can get some significant change in their health.
So the struggle goes on. In a remote, frozen corner of Alaska, 3 whales and a rescue effort of epic size. David Dow, CBS News, Point Barrow, Alaska.
In a world with more than its share of human misery and sorrow, Bangladesh, the Sudan, and Ethiopia come to mind. Why has the fate of those trapped whales attracted so much attention? We'll be back in a moment to look at that phenomenon.
Pat Van Patten and Sally Struthers.
Antique cars are still around because their owners always change the oil. Back then you had to do it yourself. Remember? But today, there's Jiffy Lube. In 10 minutes, the J-Team changes the oil with quality Pennzoil. Here comes the Pennzoil, replaces the filter, fill the fluids, and lubes the chassis. Want your car to last? Welcome to Jiffy Lube.
We'll take care of you like family.
Pat, meet my antique. Sally, meet mine.
I can't get out of bed.
Ever notice how even the smallest cold turns everything into a big effort.
What a drag!
It's time to get the big relief of Dymatap. In 12-hour extend tabs, Dymatap is recommended millions of times by doctors and pharmacists.
So you have a cold? I've got just the thing.
Dymatap. It gets things back to normal.
Claude Akins. Love your Polygrip ads, but I use a powder adhesive for my dentures.
Then try this. Super Polygrip Powder. One use holds up to 12 full hours. Get Super Polygrip Powder with 12-hour holding power.
Remember this little number. There's just 150 calories, no fat, and it tastes fabulous. Plus, this little number is going to help me get into this little number.
Yoplait 150, now in vanilla and mixed berry.
Today's saga of the trapped whales is just the latest chapter, perhaps no more than a footnote, in a connection between man and whale that goes back to biblical times and to strange stories told about Leviathan by ancient mariners. Correspondent Richard Roth looks at the continuing attraction of the whale in our age of high-tech and high cynicism.
The Arctic drama hasn't just attracted attention, it's threatening to hijack the national consciousness. Today it knocked the election campaign off the front page in Washington and buried the World Series in parts of California.
3 whales.
It's news in Britain and on the European continent. Just what is going on here? Ask the oil company that's spending an estimated $500,000 to save 3 whales.
It's good for public relations, but that's not the motivation. We didn't imagine that it would receive this kind of attention. We're not disappointed that it has.
Whether it's stuck in Alaskan ice, stranded on a New England beach, or swimming in the Sacramento River, there's something about a whale we seem to find irresistible.
They are the biggest creature that has ever lived on in the earth. Even the biggest dinosaurs are not as big as a big whale.
More than big, Leviathan. And from Jonah to Ahab, man's curiosity about whales has been like an obsession.
People do have a liking or a psychological empathy because they're whales. They seem to think that they're different than other animals.
They seem to think they're almost human. Across the country today, the Alaskan whales were schoolroom topics.
How do you think they feel underneath there?
Scared.
They're scared.
We should try and help them too, because they're animals. They should have a right to be alive.
The story, editors say, is something people can relate to, a break from politics.
It's a human drama. It's compelling. It's another Jessica McClure story where everyone in the country is watching to see what's going to happen to these whales.
Hardly mentioned is that the drama actually happens all the time, though it's only accessible trapped whales that get photographed. The others get hunted.
Typically, either the Eskimos will harvest the animals, or if there are no Eskimos around, polar bears almost invariably will find the trapped animals and will harvest them.
And as any newsman knows, when the press beats the polar bears, that's a story. Richard Roth, CBS News, New York.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
I'm Harry Smith. Tomorrow, Barbara Bush looks ahead to Election Day. Also, baseball's Bart Giamatti and Whoopi Goldberg tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
This is